So why do you think we've got to this point where there is this kind of disagreement? Because there's certainly people who support what Jeremy's been doing, thinks it's fine, thinks it's ready to go. There's people who don't. And as I said to you, like, you've got it on your t-shirt, the don't trust, verify. It's a really great thing that people say and kind of as a kind of like a moniker for Bitcoin. But actually, it's completely impossible for me to not trust some people. I cannot verify wallet code. I have to trust at some point that somebody else has done it. I cannot verify whether this is good for Bitcoin or not. I have to build trust, and I build trust around people. So I have a high level of trust in yourself, Peter Willey, Andrew Polstra, Matt Corallo, Greg Maxwell, and that's trust that's been built over time. I have less trust with Jeremy. That's not to say I don't trust him. I just haven't had that built. And the trust is built by a combination of how much time I've spent with somebody, how much trust they have built within the community. It's like career history, time in the community, etc. So I think people do have to rely on trust sometimes. And when Jeremy proposes an idea and I review it and say, okay, that's interesting, I don't know much about it, and I see, Adam Back is not supporting it, and I see maybe other people like Matt Corallo not even talking about it, that's a red flag for me. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I think that's just a reality.
Yeah, I think it's true for everybody because, my background is like applied crypto, so I know quite a bit about internals of Schnorr signatures and things. So in a way, the Schnorr signature part of Taproot came from IRC discussion in 2013, where I was saying Bitcoin should use Schnorr signatures, they're better. And, people listened over time and eventually that got picked up. So, but at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily know, the serialization details of Taproot or, how it's been coded and stuff like that. So like yourself, I'm trusting that some very clever engineers have carefully built that, rigorously tested it, and peer-reviewed line by line each line that coded it. And so you're sort of relying as well that there are many eyes carefully checking and a lot of mutual interest for it to be secure. So I think that's ultimately what people are relying on. Yeah, I think there's something about Bitcoin change process which is maybe a bit like aircraft design modifications, right?
Well, have you seen the Boeing documentary?
I haven't seen the documentary, but I read quite a bit about the Max issue, and I watch aircraft crash investigations. I find very interesting.
Yeah, I've watched, I think, nearly every episode of that because I used to be shit scared of flying, and watching air crash investigation actually made me more confident in flying. Strangely, because you see the A/B testing that a bunch of people have been through with flying, but the Boeing thing. So it was when I first interviewed Austin Hill. He said to me, Bitcoin development should be like nuclear. I think it was like nuclear reactor building. It should be considered the same, or no, it's space flight. It should be the same because one mistake on a space flight, everyone's dead. One mistake in Bitcoin, everyone loses their money. It has to be considered the same. The same rigor, the same testing, and so like that just reminds me of that. And when you say like airplanes, I was like, well, it all went wrong with Boeing.
Well, so the
rigor.
The one of the reasons I think that it's an interesting analogy, which is counterintuitive to many people, including technical people like Jeremy, who come from other backgrounds, is that aircraft, there's lots of engineering, but ultimately what makes them robust and safe is kind of biological evolution. So it wasn't that, the aircraft engineers came along and said, well, this would be the best design. And when it goes wrong, well, we'll just make a better design then. It's more that they make the best design they know how to make. It breaks apart for some reason they didn't expect. They do the investigation and find out that square-edged windows develop cracks. So now aircraft have round-edged windows. Nobody saw that coming, but now we know that. And so what told us that wasn't human ingenuity. It was physics and biology, right? And so there's a certain, suspension of ego that comes with that, which is these evolved systems are too complex for humans to design ab initio, we have to design by observing, engaging in peer review, taking the best of everybody's ideas, and learning from things that went wrong or nearly went wrong before. And so when you look at it from that perspective, there's something very wrong about one person saying, well, I want square windows. Can I have them now? Nobody found a bug in them, right? Like, no, well, you might be right. We don't know. But let's continue with the safety process, right? And, in the same way, when Boeing and Airbus make modifications to aircraft, they have to get them flight certified, which involves all kinds of rigorous testing, right? So Bitcoin is not as hierarchical, but it has an enormous amount of testing that goes into it. And so, the part of the activate it now is kind of bypassing that process, which is the danger.
Well, we've seen what happens the opposite side with Ethereum, which openly said, let's move fast and break things. And they did break a lot of things, including people's money.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of platform has tended to lose about $1 billion a year to hacks and rug pulls and things. And that was last year, so you might have thought it was a one-off, but I think it lost 300 million within the first few months of this year. So it's on track.
It's on track.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck that. I don't want that with my Bitcoin. Okay, so going back to the approach then Jeremy has taken, because they're, like I say, I've gone with the can't verify trust. That's my approach. I should get that as a t-shirt. And I've trusted people, and therefore, openly said I'm concerned about what's happening with this. Is there a different approach you think Jeremy himself should have or could have taken?
Well, I mean, I think he would say he tried because it's also a fact in open source software in general, and that extends to Bitcoin as well, that, there are volunteers working on things. Mm-hmm. Either they're unpaid or they're paid a stipend to do independently what they think is good for Bitcoin. So nobody's telling them what to do. And generally it's more fun for people to build things rather than review other people's things.
Yeah.
And so it's just a fact that if you want to, if you think you have a good idea and you want to get it deployed, that depends on other people agreeing it's a good idea, and being more forceful won't make them agree. If anything, it will make them pull back.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's where it went wrong, basically. So if you look at Schnorr, the time when I was discussing Schnorr signatures in 2013 on IRC till when Taproot and Schnorr became live, that's a long time, right? It's 8 years or something.
8 years, yeah.
But there was no force. I was just describing ideas. I did almost nothing, in fact, apart from describing ideas, and other people gradually got more excited and spent a lot of time working out details, and finally you had it, right? So I think it's something else from the ITF. Now, of course, the ITF is a bit more hierarchical, but they have a chair for each protocol discussion group. And the chair's role is to find consensus, to see what the group of people discussing, to declare when they've reached consensus. And it would be unthinkable for the chair to be the proposer of a protocol and then bless its own protocol and say, well, that one has consensus, we're going to activate it now. But if you look at what Jeremy's doing, not through any malice, I think, but just because he's enthusiastic and wants to generate action, he's kind of acting like, the proposer, the implementer, and the chair, and the person who's sort of trying to organize the meetings and get it activated. And it looks like, a kind of one-man show. And, I think what you just have to do, and I've discussed this with Jeremy last year as well, is you have to, work with other people. So find somebody else who's enthusiastic about it to co-propose it or co-author it or champion it, or, and then once you've got two people interested in it, maybe you'll find a third, and then that's a step closer to consensus.
It's like building political sport.
Kind of. I think it's, ultimately most of the people who are involved in the protocol development have got pretty good at separating ego from technical comparisons. So you'll see people having what sound like fierce arguments about details, and at the end of the conversation they'll exclaim, "Oh, you're right. That's great. Now we can move on." So they've convinced themselves that they're wrong. That's fine, right? They just want to see the best outcome go forward. But you got to engage in that conversation. And I think, it can be frustrating because the imbalance of energy to build things versus review things.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's and I guess for Jeremy, it sucks. Like he's probably worked on this really hard for 2 years, feels like it's ready to go, wants to get implemented, and then just hasn't been able to get that done.
Right, but say it's kind of jumping the queue as well, right? Because describe Christian Decker's experience, right? He worked on the what is it, uniform transaction ID, and that didn't go anywhere. Like SegWit took over, but it was a better proposal, and he recognizes that, and he had a small part in it. So that's just open source development in general. It's like that, right?
Coming up against the Bitcoin Glacier.
Well, I mean,
which is for a good reason.
It's a competition of ideas, and it's not, it's a collaborative competition of ideas. So if you propose a kind of organized set of ideas as a proposal, some parts of them might end up being good and used, and some parts might not. And you just have to be, open to that. And I think also, the imposition of a time frame is risky as well, right? So Jeremy was saying, well, Lex, I need your comments by here, or I'm going to activate it. I mean, he's backed away from that now, but people really don't like that because
it's like a threat.
Well, I mean, it's it's like, well, it's like Boeing, like or the Space Shuttle Challenger, right? We're going to launch on this day. It became a political decision, and then it exploded, right?
Well, it's like S2X.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that activation as well, because it seemed to then, not only did this idea come out of nowhere, it suddenly felt like, well, there's a way to brute force get this live by using speedy trial activation.
Right.
Something, again, that I was told was used for Taproot. I mean, I wouldn't know anything about this at the time. Taproot was getting activated great. The little orange squares were appearing, yada, yada. But now I am interested in this because I'm like, well, why was speedy trial used for Taproot? What was used previously? What is this?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of confusion about that. You see a lot of people, there's a CTV, Telegram, and I think IRC and so on. And there's clearly confusion about miners' part in activation. So they think that, well, you make a proposal and the miners vote on it and it happens or not. And that's the process. But that's really not the process. I mean, if we learn anything from the block size drama and the final SegWit activation via UASF, it's that miners have almost no influence on the outcome. 85% of miners said they were against the activation. It activated anyway, and they continued mining Bitcoin. So that's a lesson that everybody should learn. Now there are a lot of new people who don't know about the lesson, and so they just don't understand how it works. But basically, what activates Bitcoin is more economics, the important economic nodes like exchanges, wallets, and payment processors and individuals and investors running full nodes. If they agree and they upgrade, then the miners have to follow. And everybody has to follow, stay on the same network. Now, of course, you can get forks, and that's happened in the past where you get some kind of minority. But in particular, all the miners are doing is helping, signaling that they've upgraded and helping users who don't upgrade to be safe. And that's it. So, in particular, if you say with a speedy trial, well, let's turn the decision over to miners, what does that mean? I mean, miners use pools. There are very few pool operators. So it basically means delegating the judgment of a consensus decision for the ecosystem and the investors to, 20 odd guys who run pools.
So what is the point of miner signaling then?
It's to protect people who don't upgrade. So if you don't upgrade through a soft fork, you don't have a full understanding, and miners could steal from you, basically.
Okay.
And so if the miners, indicate that they've upgraded, now the cooperation of the majority honest miners will protect you if you don't upgrade. Right. And that's the point of it.